You good, or you all set? Or?
Slide down.
You can.
Let me ask.
Or I can just move the chair.
Call the regular Township Board meeting of Chesterfield Township for October 26, 2021 to order. We are experiencing some technical difficulties tonight, so we have audio. We've got a backup recording system in place. With that being said, we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Clerk Berry, would you please call the roll?
Supervisor Kersten.
Here.
Treasurer Elliott. Treasurer Elliott.
Here.
Trustee Anderson.
Here.
Trustee Joseph.
Here.
Trustee DeMink.
Here.
Trustee Vosberg. Here. Clerk Berry is here.
Item 4, approval of the agenda. Clerk Berry. Oh, I'm
Full-
sorry. I'll take a motion to, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Clerk Berry, support by Trustee Vosberg. Discussion from the board? Comments from the public? No comments from the public. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee DeMink.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott. Aye. Supervisor Kersten.
Aye. Item 5, presentations. There are no presentations scheduled tonight. Move to item 6, department reports. Trustee DeMink.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. This is from Leisure Services. We have the perfect recreational basketball program to keep boys and girls active during the winter months. Dribbling, passing, and shooting skills are developed as players are taught the rules of the game. Leagues are available for 1st through 6th grade, boys and girls. Cost is $90 residents, $95 non. This is for a 4-practice, 6-game league. Registration is taking place now through December 1st. The Leisure Services Department is gearing up for the holidays and pleased to announce 2 opportunities for limited engagements with Santa. Visits with Santa will take place on Friday, December 3rd, beginning at 3:30 p.m. and continuing for 4 one-hour blocks of time. Register in advance and secure your chance to share your wish list. Santa will be stopping by for cookies and a milk story time on Friday, December 10th. Limited space available and pre-registration is required for these cost-free Christmas offerings. Register in person or online at parks.chesterfieldtownship.org. The Great Pumpkin Hunt is underway. Take a healthy outdoor walk around the Chesterfield municipal offices, where you'll find that the pumpkins have taken over our offices. Help us to locate all the pumpkins that are peeking out of the windows, glass doors, and visible from outside the building. Place your name and contact information and number of guesses in the township curbside box. Attention Leisure Services to win a prize. The hunt ends on October 29th. Next, calling all senior citizen bookworms. The Chesterfield Senior Center Book Club will meet again on Monday, November 8th. The member-led discussion of My Dear Hamilton begins at 1 p.m. To join this monthly group, call 949-0400, extension 4 for a list of upcoming titles and authors. Pre-registration is required to attend. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Trustee Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. First, the update from the library. As the board's liaison to the library, sometimes I come back to the board and just give you an update on programming. It's a unique assignment in that the Township Library Board is a separate entity from the Township Board. They operate under their own director and their own budget, and this is of particular interest when the discussion around the library millage, the recent library millage that did not pass. So this month's library board meeting, the trustees took up the issue about a potential ballot proposal in the future. And one of the areas that I wanted to bring to the board's attention was there was some debate among library board members about whether or not it was appropriate to go out and just basically ask for either a scaled down library, a different plan, a different amount, different financing, but in essence keep the same package together. There were other ideas about we'll just go out and we'll ask again for the similar and hope that a bigger election would draw more voters and it would be a more, I don't know, widespread sort of vote. Then there was the question that was posed amongst the discussion, which was, has the township itself ever expressed any interest in partnering with the library? And so there was some debate about whether or not there had been any real formal discussions. And I bring it to the board as your liaison to simply say what I shared with the library board. I think the millage was a very tough sell, as was indicated in the results. It was not even close. A 70-30 response from the electorate saying that we did not want the library was very disappointing for those on the library board. So it begs the question: what happens in a township our size, and do we have what Director Madsen calls a proper library? We have a library, but it's housed in a warehouse. And does the township need a proper library? And so, as I say, some of the commissioners felt that a joint use, a multi-use center where a library that partners, say, with maybe something that Trustee Demink might be interested in as far as leisure services. Would a library in concert with a senior center or a youth center be more advantageous for the electorate? I couldn't represent, obviously, the board, but it is something that I thought was worth bringing back to the board for discussions in a more sort of deliberate way as we move forward. And I'm happy to send maybe an email to my fellow board members if there are any ideas or suggestions at the next library board meeting to offer some ideas, and maybe a committee of some type, leisure services potentially weighing in on this, to see if there are joint use opportunities available. Would it involve the existing library property, or is there township property? And so there's a whole bunch of things to work out, but it dawned on me in this discussion that we haven't really had those in earnest. We really haven't had much discussion between our two boards. And I don't want to just be a liaison that comes back and, like a scribe, reports back, you know, here's the programming at the library, when we have such a big issue in our township. So I think it's worth a discussion, and anybody who might be interested in partnering with me and talking more directly with the library board, I would be very, very interested. So again, just something of note that I wanted to share with you, and I think we should probably do something in the way of a formal discussion about a joint use potential. Thank you.
Treasurer Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. If you take a look at the screen here, you'll see some notes from the SEMCOG General Assembly meeting that happened on October 14th. It was attended by myself, Trustee Vosberg, Supervisor Kersten, Kevin Johnson, and Karen Garby. Listed are some of the legislative updates. To note, Senator Peters has been a leader in the effort to clean up PFAS. Please look up his recent statement from October 18th to learn more at peters.senate.gov. The Dykema law firm updated members on both federal and state legislative issues, and SEMCOG shared their vision for the state ARPA funding. They highlighted the need for infrastructure, fiscal health, thriving communities, a strong economy, along with public health and safety. Next slide, please. The 4 breakout sessions included shared prosperity and economic resiliency to highlight economic development tools, districts, and workforce development. Water infrastructure highlighted a third of the region's need for upgrades, regional investment needs, and rainfall projections. Mobility and transportation highlighted increased need for safe walking and biking, implementing safer travel, and utilizing technology and data management. Parks, trails, and recreation highlighted the need for a broad reach to engage diverse users for better health. Next slide, please. One of the greatest resources through SEMCOG is its data tools. This is a sample of one of the Equity Emphasis Areas tool. As you can see in the two examples, you are able to compare Chesterfield Township to other local communities. The areas highlighted in yellow, the lightest color yellow, are the lowest, and the areas in the dark green are the highest. The two data sets that I used were youth in Chesterfield at 23%. This is a score 2, and you can see that that's the darker yellow, and in the lighter yellow you can see the score 1, and then there's a light green, it's a score 3, and then darker green is a score 5. The other one was female heads of household over the age of 65, and that is also a score 2. And you can see there is a change in the surrounding areas. There's a lot of different data sets can be used on here and a lot of other tools. Another tool is on the next slide, and Trustee Vosberg will tell you about that.
Great. Thank you. One of the things that I was interested in this particular slide, it shows crash locations in Chesterfield Township. It's hard to read it, but if you go to semcog.org, you need a little help, we can help you find that particular site. But what's useful about the information, it shows where some of the key places are, such as intersections or perhaps maybe driveways where people are coming out, or businesses, they're entering or exiting a business, and we can see where there's a lot of incidents. And it's an example of one of the tools that we get from SEMCOG, which transitions to the next thing that I wanted to talk about, and that is Supervisor Kersten has asked me to serve on a group that is discussing roads, streets, pathways, and some of the other things that will pertain to that as we get into the discussion. And the people who are on that committee consist of township staff, people from the County Department of Roads, the state legislators and/or MDOT as needed, and then representatives from SEMCOG as they talk to us and as we work with them on the Regional Transportation Improvement Plan. That's one of the things that we have available to us in Southeast Michigan utilizing Public Act 51 dollars. And then there's going to be other additional things that will come up as we continue working on this in this committee. And then another, you can see the pie chart over there. The ratings of the roads in Chesterfield are, you can see the largest piece of the pie there is red, and that's kind of poor condition, and I think we know that from driving around. And the green slice is good. It is good to know there are some good roads here, and there are some fair roads. But as we've said many times here, the township is not responsible for the roads. The county is, County Department of Roads, and also the state MDOT is. And there's federal highways as well that go through Chesterfield. There are also some private subdivision streets. The township itself is not responsible for them. However, one of our tasks is to look out for the general well-being of all of our residents. So it is something that Supervisor Kersten has taken on as a project to continue working on and working to improve our roads, be it through influencing the people who have the money, or perhaps even deciding ourselves that we may need to set some of our own money aside. That'll all be determined later. Just wanted to let people know that those discussions are going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Clerk Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. A couple of updates from the Elections Department. First off, we have an election on November the 2nd, which is 1 week from today. Please contact the clerk's office or check our website if you would like to know your precinct voting location. They have not changed from last time, but if you've forgotten and need some direction, we would like to encourage everyone to come out and vote. You may also vote by absentee ballot. We must receive an absentee ballot application completed from you in order to issue you a ballot. Once we receive the completed application, we will issue you your ballot. You can also come and vote absentee in person here at the clerk's office. Please keep in mind that when you come to the clerk's office and you cast a ballot prior to Election Day by using an envelope that it is an absentee ballot vote that you are casting, even though you are doing it here in person in the clerk's office. There seems to be quite a bit of confusion among the electorate. They believe that if they come into the office and vote in person, that that's voting in person. If it's prior to Election Day and you put your ballot in an envelope at any point and return it to us in any way, you are voting by absentee ballot. So clarification there as well. Also, the clerk's office, the elections department will be rolling out a new initiative to advise the board. Our new initiative is coming from a place that a lot of folks are concerned about their voting record and that it is accurately recorded and reflected in the state's qualified voter file. And we are going to make that available. It is available and it always has been. However, our initiative is called Know Your Vote. And that initiative will enable and encourage everyone to ask for a copy of your voter record. Please review it and make sure that it is accurate. And if it is not, you will be able to make an appointment with an elections department personnel, and we will be able to see if we can assist with correcting that record. So it is a way for everyone to have their official voter record sent to them either by mail, by email, or you can pick that up here in person at the clerk's office. If you go to our website, it should be up at some point tomorrow. Go to the elections page. There's going to be an opportunity for you to click on a button that says Request My Voter Record, and there will be the various options to ask for it to be requested. So that is a service that we are extending to all of the registered voters in Chesterfield in order to facilitate clean records and for everyone to be assured that their voting record is accurate. I would encourage my other clerks, and hopefully we will see other clerks throughout the county and throughout the state adopting similar protocols and perhaps similar initiatives to assure their voters in their home communities that their voter record is accurate as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Clerk Berry. Department reports, any department? Township Department? Director Sonnenberg? Nope. Nope, okay. Director DeShane?
Thank you, Supervisor Kersten. Members of the board, short reports tonight on 3 topic areas. The first I'd like to cover is the medical insurance renewal. Chesterfield Township transitioned from an experience-rated, fully insured contract with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan to a self-funded platform on January 1st of 2019. This change produced savings on fixed administration stop-loss fees and moved the township's renewal back to the calendar year from August. The township has made many changes over the years, and this includes transitioning to self-funding, correcting all retiree co-pays and on prescriptions, and changing the HRA plan for retirees to Community Blue 1 to eliminate the wrap component of these. All of those changes have helped control health care costs. So far in 2021, actual cash for the township is running under budget. Unlike some of the other groups, Chesterfield has not yet seen much in the way of the bounce back that is occurring on claims post-COVID. It does appear that claims are now sneaking up a little bit. In the more recent months, the Blue Cross Blue Shield experience period is showing slight increases in utilization. We are developing a projected budget and provided one in the budget that you've received workbooks on for 2022 based on illustrative rates provided by Blue Cross. When providing budget estimates this last summer, our Mankin Vance advisors indicated rates may increase slightly. If the township were to even budget the flat Blue Cross rates, the projection would show to be about $385,000 higher, or a small increase overall of our total cost. So the township has saved money since moving to self-funding and incorporating other changes, such as moving retirees to their intended prescription copay level. However, we do feel the township will begin trending at a more normal level as claims have increased slightly in more recent months. 2 other items just briefly to bring to your attention, and my slides I want to illustrate something. At our last meeting, board approved a cloud-based system of BS&A and increasing transparency in financial operations. On our website, it became evident that we could do something better now. And one thing that we've added is under quick links, under finance and budget, is the monthly budget report. So if somebody were interested in going to this link, you could find under it the to date, as of the date posted, active budget report. That should give some guidance into where the township spending process is in the calendar year, and give people an indication with some transparency about the different accounts and what we talk about often here at the meetings. Next to that, I just want to point out a periodical issued. Supervisor Kersten wants to be as transparent, open, and publish more information regarding township activities. And the Chesterfield Township Progress at a Glance, produced by the communications assistant, includes a number of items in an effort to upgrade and to inform people regarding project management reports that are underway, building an economic activity for the month, and service measure dashboard. It is not as robust as the public safety one has become, but it is the beginnings of a general township service measurement dashboard for all other operations. This is published electronically, available on the website, and is also available in hard copies at our front counter. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Duchesne. No further department reports. Item number 7, consent agenda. Clerk Berry.
All items under the consent agenda are considered routine by the board and will be enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion of these items. If discussion of any item is required by a board member, it will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Public comments on the consent agenda items are permitted. 7A, approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of October 12th, 2021. Approval of the payment of bills as submitted by the Finance Department. Recommendation to approve a retirement and transition agreement for Donald Coddington, Director of Public Works.
Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as read?
Motion to approve as stated.
Support.
By Clerk Berry, support by Treasurer Elliott. Board comments? No board comments? Public comments?
Paul LaFata, 48055 Mallard. In the payment of bills, in the October 12th board meeting payment of bills, there was $8,871.62 for repair for the historic village. There was no pre-approval from the Township Board for an expenditure over $5,000. In today's approval, there's another for historic village repairs, $8,911 for the historic village, all under general ledger number 101-265-970-000, capital outlay. Remember those numbers. There's two issues. One is the general ledger number that the expense is written on, and the other one is the fact that it seems like continuously we don't abide by the purchasing policy. I don't care what it is, but we don't approve it. And the other thing is I don't know when it changed, but when I was treasurer, there was only two expenses that the general fund paid for the historic village. One was for the lighting at night for safety, and the other one was for the liability insurance because the township owns the property. I don't know when this has changed. Thank you.
Any further comments from the public? I have a motion by Clerk Berry, supported by Treasurer Elliott. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Clerk Berry, aye. Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
No.
Trustee Joseph.
No.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye. Item 8, public hearings. There are no public hearings scheduled tonight. Item 9, the regular agenda. Item 9A.
Item 9A is to adopt proclamation number 2021-08 in recognition of Veterans Day 2021.
Support.
Motion by trustee Joseph, supported by trustee Anderson. Comments from board? Comments from the public? Clerk Berry, call the roll.
Mr. Supervisor, if you would like me to read the proclamation into the record?
Yes, please.
Veterans Day Proclamation 2021. On behalf of the people of the Charter Township of Chesterfield, Macomb County, State of Michigan, the Chesterfield Township Board of Trustees do hereby proclaim Thursday, November 11th, 2021 as Veterans Day. Whereas Veterans Day occurs on November 11th every year in the United States in honor of the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month of 1918 that signaled the end of World War I, known as Armistice Day. And whereas in 1954, President Dwight D. Eisenhower officially changed the name of the holiday from Armistice Day to Veterans Day. And whereas Veterans Day commemorates veterans of all wars, and whereas veterans make the courageous and selfless sacrifice to protect our state and nation, and whereas on this day and every day, we honor the contributions and sacrifices of our nation's approximately 20 million veterans, including the nearly 600,000 living in Michigan, and encourage citizens throughout the state to recognize the importance of this day as we show our utmost gratitude to our veterans and their families. And whereas it is our shared responsibility to honor and protect our state's veterans, just as they have made a brave choice to protect all of us. Now, therefore, the Chesterfield Township Board of Trustees do hereby proclaim November 11th, 2021 as Veterans Day in Michigan.
Thank you, Clerk Berry. I have a motion by trustee Joseph, supported by trustee Anderson. Clerk Berry, call the roll.
Trustee Joseph. Aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee DeMink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Item 8B, Clerk Berry.
Item 8B is to approve a request for a small winemaker license for Arctic Circle Brewing Company located at 27663 23 Mile Road, Chesterfield, Michigan, 48051, and adopt resolution number 2021-29.
Support.
Motion by trustee Joseph, supported by trustee DeMink. Comments from the board? Comments from the public? Have a motion by trustee Joseph, supported by trustee DeMink. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Trustee Joseph. Aye. Trustee DeMink.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Item 9C, Clerk Berry.
Item 9C is to approve a recommendation by Public Works to purchase meters and meter components from Ferguson Waterworks at a total cost of $15,198.92 from GL number 591-542-740000.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Motion by trustee DeMink, support by trustee Vosberg. Director Johnson.
Good evening, Board. This is just our normal everyday operation for meter components. Typically, we bring this up every few months. The only difference on this one is per the supervisor, we're going to start incorporating a little more data. So we're going to start with our inventory count of where we're at and kind of subsequent projects that are coming forward, developments that are coming forward and why we're purchasing the meters. So we're kind of giving a more detailed information on why we're purchasing the meters to give you guys more information. So if there's any questions, I welcome them.
Discussion from the board. Trustee Joseph.
The additional information that you're referring to, where is it in terms of the packet?
On the attachment,
Yes?
I put on there, it explains the number of the inventory that we had on hand. are in stock, and then below it, we put on there 10 3/4-inch meters are going to be installed at the Village of East Harbor, 4 of them in Wellington condos. Then we have 14 R900 devices being installed for those meters, which are the radio devices. So we're kind of laying out projects that are coming up as to why we're going to need these meters. So we're kind of giving a heads up.
What does the inventory sheet look like in terms of, for a long time, we were even approving these on the consent agenda. They were just that routine.
Yep.
What do we have in the way of inventory similar to this? And in case anyone's wondering, this is the additional information about this particular purchase in terms of where they're going. But what about, is there a running total? So like, is there a ledger book or some work order? We have a lot of software that we keep track of, projects and so forth. Can we see the historical sort of utilization of these meters and the meter components, where they went in proximity to what the board approved? So if the board approved 50 meters, would you be able to look somewhere and see those 50 meters went similar to what you have here?
Yes, so we have our BSNA utility billing software that keeps track of when meters were installed, how many were installed each week. We can pull reports on that. We're starting to keep count every month of how many meters we have on hand, how many are getting installed, how many that we're purchasing, and then we're keeping that total. We're keeping track of that on a monthly basis to make sure we got a hand of where all our meters are at.
Would that be something you'd be willing to just drop in my mailbox at some point when you get a minute to
Absolutely.
give a rundown of the last few meter purchases?
I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further comments from the board? Comments from the public? I have a motion by trustee DeMink, supported by trustee Vosberg, to approve item 9C. Clerk Berry?
Trustee DeMink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Item 9D.
Item 9D is to approve a recommendation by Facilities and Operations Department to purchase a new Bandit Intimidator 15 XP chipper from Bandit Industries in the amount of $44,232 from GL number 101-265-970-000.
Do I have a motion to support? Or do I have a motion, I'm sorry?
Motion to approve.
Clerk Berry?
Support.
Motion to approve by Clerk Berry, supported by trustee Vosberg. Director Sonnenberg, please.
Yes, good evening. This chipper that we see in front of us, it looks like it's good in shape, but it's about 20 years old, actually over 20 years old. So our goal is, there's been a ton of safety improvements since, so we'd like to upgrade to a new unit. This unit obviously is only going to be used for emergency purposes like we did this summer, and then for township maintenance, we're doing some path improvements and stuff like that. This is a handy tool. We also, in an emergency situation, it's hard to get a hold of a chipper, so it's nice when we have one on stock, in-house, so we have the ability to use it when needed. We did some research. We reached out to several vendors, all DTEs, tree vendors, to kind of find the best unit that would fit our needs. So that's the unit that you can see that we recommended. We also went from a gas unit, or a diesel unit, to a gas unit, because there was a significant savings, about $10,000. And after everybody we talked to, it was just a better position for us. So that's what you have in front of you, if you have any questions.
Thank you. Discussion from the board. Trustee Anderson.
Yeah, thank you. Earlier this year, Township Board purchased a very expensive lawnmower for Pollard Park, state-of-the-art, designed just for that park during the discussion. The next meeting, we contracted out cutting the grass at Pollard Park. How often, how many hours a year, how many hours a year is this chipper used?
We used to use this chipper was used for hundreds and hundreds of hours because we used, as you know all too well, we had a chipping program. And once I started here, the chipping program, in my opinion, was too dangerous. We had people and kids and our staff on the side of Jefferson pulling in limbs, and it's one of the most dangerous pieces of equipment we operate. So we only like to pull this out for emergency services. So our use on this is limited by design. We only want to use it when we have to or in a safe environment. So it's not a piece of equipment we need a lot, but when we need it, it's here. So That's why we're recommending the purchase. We've discussed this in-house and went through different scenarios. We even looked at leasing as a possibility, but it was too expensive. So this was our best option.
Trustee Joseph.
Yeah, along the same lines as Trustee Anderson, we used to provide a chipping service to the residents. And we pointed out that this chipper was a little too dangerous for widespread, and it was a program that a lot of residents really enjoyed and appreciated, and we couldn't do it. We said we were going to use this piece of equipment for emergencies, and it was satisfactory, you know, for that purpose. But as Trustee Anderson says, why is the why is there, and what is the criteria for when we contract out? So we have this machine when we went away from public chipping, and we said we're going to use it only for township sort of in-house purposes during an emergency, and over the last couple of years we've used it a handful of times. Why is it not sufficient to continue on that scale as opposed to spending, you know, the proposed 45 or 44,000 if we're using it on an emergency basis? And why wouldn't we contract out those emergencies instead of adding another piece of very highly expensive equipment which requires maintenance and so forth? So what's the decision for a purchase like this as opposed to just using what, again, isn't appropriate for widespread use, but is perfectly appropriate for emergency use?
Great question. So we felt, when you look at this piece of equipment, there's several safety rails that go around the outside of the intake and other things that nowadays is standard on all equipment. So if you were to get dragged or pushed near the chute, you can actually pull. There's a strap and several bars. I can send you a design. It's actually the same things we identified when we stopped the chipping program. It's those few extra emergency features that 20 years ago they didn't incorporate, but as a result of several incidents, unfortunately, they've incorporated these new, and they're kind of mandatory on some equipment. Like, for example, we had somebody come out and look at this piece of equipment, and at today's value, he estimated that it would be $3,000 or less for us to auction it or sell it because it's lacking that safety equipment. And the fear for us is that it might be limited use, correct? But if we do use it and it's in this state, then it could be an issue, and we just don't want to see any of our employees operate a piece of unsafe equipment. And the problem with it is when we run emergency services, typically, like the storm we had this summer, all the other tree companies, when you call, everyone's so busy with their equipment running around town, we don't have access to a chipper. So that's why I feel like this piece of equipment is kind of vital. Like I said, when it's needed, or when you need it in town for an emergency, they're hard to get. So it would be nice to have this on hand for emergency purposes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Trustee Domingue.
So I definitely indicated with the old one, it didn't meet any type of OSHA or MyOSHA requirements, and you know, especially around equipment's changed over the years. Josh, and I hate to hit you with this question, I didn't get a hold of you ahead of time, but when we had to rent one during the storm, and I remember you guys had to get one, I think Brad gave you the okay to rent it. Do you remember what that, would you have to get from Chet's or somebody like that? Do you remember what that cost a day or an hour? How did that run?
I can't remember exactly, but I can
Okay.
tell you to lease this on a monthly basis during the peak season is about $5,000 a month, just to lease a piece of equipment. And that's outside of renting at Chet's, which on a daily rental is usually typically more expensive. So we did really try to do our homework on this. We wouldn't be bringing you this purchase if we didn't think it didn't make sense. And it's a piece of equipment. You don't like to have something sitting around, but in the case of an emergency, we've had this for 20 years. If we get 20 years out of our new one, then we'll be in good shape.
Okay, sorry about the last minute question,
No,
but it
you're
just came
fine.
to mind up here.
Thank
Thank you, sir.
Trustee Joseph, follow?
Yeah, just a quick follow-up, if I may. The reason that we disbanded the chipping service for the residents was primarily because the equipment was not safe. Do you envision us being able to reinstitute a chipping policy that would afford residents some access to this, and not just on an emergency basis, but a policy that afforded residents periodically chipping service?
Great question. So for me personally, I feel like this is a piece of equipment dangerous. The more hours it's operated, the more your risk increases. So to me, our staff is trained on this equipment, but it should be limited use. For example, the problem I had with the chipping program is when I first came here, we observed you drive down Jefferson And on the side of the road where you got people driving 45 miles an hour, you got our guys jamming 15-foot limbs in a chipper. One of those goes sideways, pushes somebody in the street. There was just too many risk factors in for a group that we don't chip on a daily basis. We chipped about, I want to say it was about 350 to 385 piles annually during our chipping program. So that means somewhere along the way, those guys were standing out on the side of the road, jamming branches in, and it wasn't always in the best spots. When you get along Sutton or Jefferson, the shoulders aren't real big, and some people would stack those branches right along. So I'm open to the conversation if it's something the public wants to do, as long as we find a different way to run it. We've talked about the possibility of getting a vendor involved or something like that. I'm open to all, sorry, I keep hitting that. I'm open to all options. I just feel like having our staff operate this equipment on the side of the road is dangerous. Thank you.
I'll follow up, just Trustee Joseph, we are creating a use policy for this in emergency situations and the required mandated training to utilize it. As was stated, this thing's probably the most dangerous piece of equipment in the DPW Water Department's inventory, and several accidents, one even recently. This one is outdated. It is, I'm gonna say it's unsafe, but the value of having something like this to protect the township property and the township use when a storm does occur is why I asked him to bring this forward to the board. So with that being said, any further discussion? Thank you. I have a motion by Clerk Barry, supported, I'm sorry, public comment. Sorry.
Paul Lafata, 48055 Mallard. If you look at the executive summary, there is no finance approval, hasn't gone through finance. And if you look at General Ledger 101-265-970, there's been previous expenditures against it already for new vehicles. We bought the lawnmower that Trustee Anderson talked about. We have the expenses that have already been spent against the historical village. We have other expenses from board meeting 22321 for $374, 5921 for $2,243 for partners, 914 amount for $4,896 for command communication, walkie-talkies or something. None of the information, financial information on any one of these agenda items on the board meeting today that references 101-265-970 is accurate to what the township purchasing policy requires in Section 7 of purchasing authorizations, saying that it must be accurate. So we are sitting here again going through a motion, and we have a $40,000 differential from what we think we have available to spend based on my figures. So I don't know how we keep accounting here, but it doesn't tie. All you have to do is you take the $514,000 that you start with on the 2021 budget, and you just subtract every time that you spend against it. I think we have a problem because the numbers don't match. And every time we go forward and just blow it off like the numbers don't match, it's just showing how incompetent we are, because all we do is we invite mediocrity. We don't invite accuracy. And it's township tax dollars that we're spending. Thank you.
Further comments from the public?
Joe Kadich, I live on Sutton. I wasn't happy when they took away the service for chipping. Basically, it was about every 2 weeks during the summer. You just called in, basically put your name on a list, and they added you to the list, and when they got a big enough list, probably every 2 weeks they came out and chipped. Wasn't happy with it. we lived with it, probably went, what, 3, maybe 4 years without it. And then all of a sudden, we have one storm that brought some limbs down and caused some problems. People had limbs to deal with. And we're gonna go out and spend $44,000 for one thing. In the past, if you called for service to get it picked up, it could be 2 weeks before they're gonna come out. Now, why does it have to be when an emergency, you get limbs down, they have to come out right away? You can't wait if you couldn't get a chipper or get somebody with a chipper to come out within a week or so, that they couldn't sit there? The only thing that came out of this thing when they took it away was they said it was basically the machine didn't work right, it was dangerous, and after they did that, they didn't service the public, but I saw it used in the different areas in the park when they were chipping trees and trimming trees in basically the park on Jefferson. I don't see the need to go to have a piece of equipment that's gonna sit there for maybe 2 or 3 years, other than when they need it periodically. Thank you.
John Spica, 53978 Conner Drive. When the former supervisor was here, Mr. Echevetti, he got rid of this program because he said it was very dangerous. Obviously, that's come out tonight. The big issue that I have is I've sat in the audience the last time that Josh wanted to make a big purchase in Chesterfield, and he had to have this TRX mower. We had to have it at $19,500. The board approved it, and the following meeting, we subcontracted the work out. So, again, I've got no confidence when he comes up and asks for something in the township, because history is just going to replay itself. I can see it already. And again, it came out that we're only going to be using this in emergency situations. So I think in the long run, it's going to be cheaper if we rent one out instead of, at this time, putting out $44,000. So, and if I listened to what he had to say, Josh, and this is more of a want for Josh than a need for Chesterfield. And we don't have money in Chesterfield right now. We're running at almost a $3 million deficit for wants. So, and then the other question is, are we planning on using money from the American Rescue Plan to pay for this? I haven't heard. I heard where Mr. LaFata had talked about the fund that you guys are looking to take this out. But again, I think this should be a no vote. Thank you.
Further comments from the public? Bring it back up to the board. Trustee Joseph?
I noticed in the executive summary, as it relates to one of the questions about the accounting. Thank you. I noticed in the executive summary as it relates to the accounting and the account that this is going to be drawn out of, there's mention of a budgeted tractor purchase that was scheduled for 2021, and based on some review of equipment that is needed, it's thought that this expenditure could replace the tractor expenditure, and so in essence it's a wash from a delay in the purchase of the tractor, this being seen as a more immediate need. Is that a fair characterization, or?
Yeah, well, like we do on a weekly basis, we're always reviewing the budget and our purchases, and there was a discussion had, we were gonna move forward. We put in the plan to purchase a Bobcat, but we decided at the time, because of the cost of the machine went up and other factors, that we would hold off till the following year, and then we would use those funds for a need. And I just want to touch too on this chipper. You know, one of the problems we had with the chipping program is when you'd pull up to someone's yard, they would have a massive pile of branches. When our staff goes out to...
No, Mr. Summer, that wasn't my question.
I'm sorry.
The other thing that I just wanted to point out, if the utilization of the existing is seen as unsafe from, as Trustee Demink pointed out, even OSHA standards, you're running a lot of risk running this product, this machine, in any circumstance, whether it's for township use or the environment you describe where you're out in the neighborhoods. And so when I asked about could we use this new piece of equipment with safety features to replace the chipping program, the response again was the act itself is very unsafe. The act itself, and the more exposure that you have to the machine, the more likelihood you have for, problems. I think it's for that reason, I would say, we shouldn't even be in the chipping business at all. That the reality is, in most instances, the more you do something, the more proficient you become. If you're only using a piece of equipment in an emergency situation, I think you could argue that you would almost require retraining on a regular basis. And that assumes that the same crew that used the chipper on the previous emergency need, is operating on this emergency need. So for those reasons, I think it might be advantageous, again, listening to you describe the very limited amount of utilization of any chipper, is to simply say, we clear the debris. If we have a storm and we have limbs down and they're blocking roadways and they interfere with emergency vehicles or roadway travel, we clear the road, we pile it up, and then we bring in a contractor on a handful of occasions to chip. Not only do we save the $45K now, but we also save the requirements for training, maintenance, and avoid what this sounds like to be certain disaster at some point. We roll the dice every time we use this piece of equipment, as it is dangerous. Why don't we just get out of the danger game altogether, satisfy the emergency, pile it up. I realize we can't going to get a chipping crew to come out immediately, but we take the short-term solution, clear the roadway, pile up our limbs on the township property, contract when we can get somebody to come out and clear it that way, and just keep everybody safe. Because I agree with you, safety is paramount, and it doesn't sound to me like a change in machinery really adequately addresses the safety concerns. So I think we should just take a pass on the purchase altogether and get out of the chipping business if it's that unsafe or dangerous. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from the board? Trustee Vosper.
Thank you. I have the utmost confidence in Director Sonnenberg and the decision-making process. I'm supporting this, and I do think that it's already been pointed out by Supervisor and others that there will be proper training. Yes, it's a piece of equipment that we don't want to have to use often, but when we do, it's very necessary, because not do it can sometimes be equally as dangerous. So thank you.
Thank you. I have a motion by Clerk Berry, supported by Trustee Vosberg, to approve item 9D. Clerk Berry?
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
No.
Trustee Joseph.
No.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye. Item 9E. Clerk Berry.
Item 9E is to approve a recommendation by Facilities and Operations Department to purchase 3 new Byers SHPE 2000X electric polysalt spreaders from VersaLift Midwest in the amount of $15,381 from GL number 101265970,000.
Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve as stated.
Motion to approve by Clerk Berry, support.
I'll support that.
Trustee Vosper? Yes. Trustee Vosper? Support. Director Sonnenberg?
So the Facility Operations Department currently has 3 gas-powered metal salt spreaders. The ages of them are 8, 13, and 21. The 21-year-old one, as you can see, they all have wear. Salt does a lot of damage. They have rust holes. So we are looking to replace these units. The 2021 budget included new salters, and on May 11, 2021, when we got approved to purchase our new vehicles, the salt spreaders were included in that purchase. Unfortunately, due to chip delays and the current auto industry, our vehicles won't come in until next budget year. So we need the salters for this season, but because of the delay of the vehicles, we'd want to go ahead and purchase the salters outside of having them outfitted on the trucks that were supposed to come in. So that's our request today.
Thank you. Discussion from the board. Trustee Joseph?
Did I understand you right? You're going to buy the salt spreaders and then set them off to the side until the trucks arrive?
No, so, good question. I'm sorry if I misspoke. So when we purchased our trucks, when we got approved to purchase 5 vehicles back on May 11th, the 3 salt spreaders were included in the vehicle purchases. They came fully outfitted. But because of the delays in those vehicles, we'll get 2 out of those 5 vehicles this year. The other 3 will be probably rolled into our future leasing program. But those 3 vehicles that were supposed to be purchased or come in this year, on this budget year, were outfitted with these spreaders. Well, because those vehicles are not going to be made in time this snow season, we want to still go ahead and purchase those salters and outfit them on our current trucks and sell the ones that we have. I hope that's clear, sorry.
Yeah, thanks for the
Thank
clarification.
you.
Further discussion from the board? Comments from the public?
Paul LaFata, 48055 Mallard. We have the same issue with this agenda item. It's out of the same general ledger number 101265970. The financials are incorrect and there's errors. The other thing, the piece of property that the current salt dome is on right now is looking at being sold. If we sell the salt dome, we're going to incur thousands of dollars for a new salt dome, or we're going to subcontract salting out. So why don't we just subcontract the salting out? Don't spend the money on the salters, and don't worry about putting a salt dome up over on the Sierra property and having to have, loaders and everything else. But the biggest issue is I'm appalled at the fact that the Township Board can spend tax dollars and they don't care that the documentation is financially inaccurate. That's totally unexcusable in any business. Thank you.
Comments from the public?
Mike Orton, 50393 Bauer. Just wondering about the when these spreaders are not in use, where their storage and maintenance and taken care of is under the situation beyond the winter months, because from the way the corrosion looks in the pictures, it looks as if they were not properly maintained over the period of time. Just want to know what the specifications are in the off-duty months, because a well-maintained machinery should last well a long time, and it looks as if it has not been. Thank you.
John Spica, 53978 Connor Drive. In the public sector, if your budget doesn't match up and I want to spend money for something, if it doesn't match up like former Treasurer LaFata mentioned, I can't do it. That's just how it works. As far as the salt spreaders, in this township, we subcontract the lawn cutting, we subcontract the snow, we subcontract the cleaning of this building, the cleaning of the DPW building. So I don't understand, because typically any company or any contract that comes up with companies, typically when you plow, you snow or you salt. It's a combination of things. So, I mean, the king of subcontracting, Josh, I don't understand how we're not subcontracting this out. But I don't think this expenditure should go forward with the numbers not matching up, and that's my say. Thank you.
Further comments from the public? Bring it back up to the board. I have a motion by Clerk Berry, supported by Trustee Vosberg, to approve 9E. Clerk Berry.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
No.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye. Item 9F.
Item 9F is to approve a recommendation by Facilities and Operations Department to award a contract to Partners in Architecture PLC for the design, documentation, and oversight of the municipal office interior renovation project in the amount of $61,800 from GL number 101-265-970000.
Move
Do
to
I have a
approve.
motion for support?
Second.
Trustee Vosberg, I'm sorry. Is that your motion?
Yes, you did. My microphone's not working properly.
I have a motion by Trustee Vosberg, second by Clerk Berry.
May I speak to this?
Deputy Duchesne, please.
For the board, I would like to enter some comments for you on actually what's going to be both items. The buildings in question, this is not another study. We've got plenty of studies. These are both analysis and work plans to address the Township Hall and Fire Station 2. There is clearly in this building a tremendous loss of energy utilization. It is not modern in any way possible. It is difficult to modernize, to maintain the correct airflow, and a number of other aspects to the building. Fire Station 2 has been much talked about, but it has never been properly evaluated with a potential work plan to give to the board. Supervisor Kersten asked to start work on both of these as priorities so that we would both utilize the talents of an architect and analyze what actual process to go forward to improve these buildings. There are aspects of these buildings that are clearly detrimental to daily work life in every shape and form. They also don't serve the public terribly well, and those have been improved at part and parcel as the years have gone on, but sitting in a 1992 building with no HVAC improvements, no LEED analysis, energy modernization, or utilization of some of the aspects that are available has obviously cost the township considerably money over the years. Now, in speaking to the proponents' recommendations, Partners in Architect is a local firm that I am pleased to say I have had and witnessed experience with their work. Partners in Architect is a local firm, and as mentioned, one of the principals is, primary principal is a resident of this community and is active in community affairs. I have no reluctance whatsoever to recommend them moving forward to not just do an analysis, but take together to do an actual action plan to address these various HVAC components, the appurtenances, the structures, and to utilize their best methods available today to give to the board an actual action plan to move ahead and do something. You cannot continue to take vendors' recommendations on how to improve or change buildings. They have an inherent self-interest. You can't do that with heating and cooling. You can't certainly do that with utilization on buildings such as a fire station. I think in proceeding, I'll leave this detail and I'll turn that over to Josh to address. Director Sonnenberg can certainly bring the background and mechanics to it. But again, I recommend to the board, based on experience and knowledge in the firm, Partners and Architect, to do the work for you in these two areas and vitally move the township ahead instead of just analyzing and concerned about different problems and programs, and think that there will be a very positive outcome, not only for the people that work in these buildings, but for the residents and the community's bottom line and pocketbook when they're properly and successfully implemented. Thank you.
Director Sonberg, you want to add anything?
I think Mr. Duchesne covered it if you have any questions.
All right. Bring it back up to the board. Trustee Joseph.
The comment that I wrote down, Deputy Supervisor Duchesne, you said you can't use the vendor as the source for recommendations, that they would have, in essence, an inherent sort of upside for recommending certain things. But that's the exact same thing we do on the sidewalk replacement program. The vendor making the recommendations about what to repair is in on 25% of the cost. So clearly that practice is used here. The point that I'm trying to make in terms of what the architect that we're bringing in, what is the guidance that what are we trying to accomplish, and what are we looking to do with a $61,000 architect design budget, which means I don't know what the actual cost of the renovation will be, but if 61K is just for the architect, I would hope that we have some very clear objectives that we're trying to meet with the design, and could we speak to those? Because it's not clear to me that we're using the architect in a way that puts him in proximity to the, recommendation making. What are we trying to accomplish by bringing in the architect? So in terms of space for different departments, where will they be? I heard the HVAC, which I know has been problematic, and airflow and so forth, but what are we trying to do in terms of space? How many workstations do we have in the building now, and what will we be going to? Those kinds of things. What is it that the architect, you've asked them to do?
Well, those are very good points, and I think that we should look at these as phased-in parts of a project. So the initial request is obviously a modernization discussion, and we have some detail on that. The primary concerns are with the movement of air in the building and the ability of the technology to start working in the building, in a building that is not suited for that correctly. So you would have a phase of development where national standards are applied. There is a standard for how much space everybody should be allocated to work in. There is an airflow and air exchange standard. There is an energy standard, what modern buildings should retain in both heating and cooling, and how that should be modified. So the architect brings those to the table to work with you, the owner, in appropriately what you're trying to achieve. Now, I think simply there is a modernization aspect to all the facility, but moving ahead in that, there will be a phase about options and design, what the owner, the township board, wants to achieve in that process. So this isn't one a design fits all where your architect will tell you what it should look like and how much you should spend and do that. It'll give you options for that, and it'll rectify some of those standard and issues that many here at the table have long brought up, that the energy efficiency of the building, the serviceability of the building, there are a number of things that go into it. And the modernization has started somewhat, but it's been very piecemeal. And I think that's been brought up by the board from time to time. Are we going to do this all right, or are we going to continue to do a bathroom? We're going to do a counter. We're going to do those things. So I think that's the important thing. The architect isn't just going to bring pictures to you and say, what would you like? It's going to say there's some standards and design characteristics. How much then do you want to spend, and what can you do to make it more energy efficient and effective in a service building as we move ahead? So there's a lot of steps in the process. The 61, I wanted to emphasize, to your point, trustee, is not like buy a package and then you run with it. It's got some elements to it where you will be working with them for some time to reach your objective, which is not pre-designed by them except for those standards you'd apply.
Just a quick follow-up, if I may. Could we make sure that we're incorporating some feedback from the employees with regard to health issues and concerns regarding airflow? Because we do have, and I have heard from employees who talk about the airflow here in this building and the air quality. And so as we're designing things and spending money, we look at, the employee safety and a better work environment, and then also the access and usability of the public, with aesthetics sort of being the last. You know, like the major points should be, I would hope, making a more efficient building, obviously lights, heat, so forth, but also the work environment itself for the employees, and maybe getting some feedback from them in terms of what they see as a priority would be a good place to go as we look at the redesign.
That's very, very intelligently stated, and yes, the employees have entered concerns with HR over time of things, and the working people of the building, both the full-time electeds, the regular employees have had issues of various kinds that have been brought to our attention. We will feed those to the architect, who's, again, based on my knowledge and experience, is very much boots on the ground kind of designers, which talked about practicality over the glitz and glamour. But even though they've turned out some very nice structures, I think they've found a way to compromise a little bit of cost on what is splash versus what is service.
Thank you. Comments from the public?
Paul Lafata, 4805 Mallard. Again, we have the same financial accuracy problem as we did on every one of the agenda items that come out of 101-265-970. Again, we're going to ignore financial accuracy, but that's okay. I guess, you know, nobody cares how the residents' money. When I was a treasurer, I did work for Johnson Control Automotive Division for a while. I was extended an email from Ms. Brown that Johnson Control Building Services, that's worldwide renowned for their efficient services for heating and air conditioning, lighting, and plumbing, offered to do a free survey of the Township Hall, free. And I forwarded that email to Director Duchesne and to, I think, Director Coddington at the time. And I was told by our supervisor at that time to stay in my own sandbox. But it was free, and they're one of the best in the world, and I've seen the work that they do. When there's high ceilings like this one in a manufacturing facility, and the air temperature varies by as much as 30 degrees, they put ductwork in the wintertime, so they pull the hot air off the ceiling, and they bring it down to utilize it for heat. But there's a lot you can get done for zero, and an architect company doesn't have the knowledge that Johnson Control does, that's been in the business for 50 years, and that's all they do. And they have very efficient facilities because that's what they strive for. And we're going to blow $60,000 with an architect. Thank you.
Further comments from the public?
John Speaka, 53978 Connor Drive. We are on a spend-a-thon tonight, so Chesterfield must have hit the lottery. In regards to what Mr. Duchesne said, as far as him getting input from the full-time elected officials, all I know is, Clerk Berry's not here full-time. I know Treasurer Elliott's at best part-time, so he must have got input from Supervisor Kersten. I'd like for him to get input from the actual full-time people, the hourly people that are here. So I think that's where you're going to get your accurate data from. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments from the public? Bring it back up to the board. I have a motion by Trustee Vosberg, supported by Clerk Berry, to approve item 9F. Clerk Berry.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Clerk Barry, aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye. Item 9G.
Item 9G is to approve a recommendation by the Public Safety and Facilities and Operations Departments to complete an architectural design and feasibility study for the Police and Fire Station 2 with Partners in Architecture for an estimated cost of $47,000, and a request to amend the 2021 budget for $19,736 in GL number 205-301-970-000 for Police Department and $27,264 in GL number 205-336-970-000 for Fire Station 2.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by trustee Joseph, second by clerk, or support by clerk Barry. Deputy Duchesne, you want to address this one?
Just one comment, really add that's new information. I won't repeat myself regarding partners on this, but this is a little different in the sense that the architect will be doing some evaluation about potential use of the building and the cost, and cost of that up front. So it really be given to the board is whether you should be investing in this building. This building is severely handicapped in many, many ways. And right now, I couldn't in good conscience say full-time people should stay in this building for a number of reasons. So you may not spend this kind of money on the design because you may not get to design. So just as a caveat, there's going to be some discussion about that, and some of the initial reviews and analysis are going to really focus on what the objective is in this facility. It may be a completely transformational process with this building as an option. So there would be a different review from an architect, engineer firms to understand that going in. It may not be the best use of this facility as what it formerly certainly would take a lot of money and investment. You may not go there. So there will be a little difference in their approach in the way they administer this part of the program than in our previous action.
Comments from the board? Trustee Joseph.
Yeah, and this particular item I support and made the motion for this because I think we have two buildings that are long overdue for exactly what was described with the word feasibility. And what we would like to do, which is the discussion that we have about this building, what we would like to do is a little bit different than a discussion about what we can do. So when we made the decision regarding Fire Station 2 and personnel safety, it was pretty clear. Director Sonnenberg came in with video of very dangerous situations, heat, electrical, things that put our firefighters in real peril from a building safety standpoint. And then when we started to examine it just on a surface level, we found even more problems, and as you say, there would be some real serious debate about whether or not it's safe to have full-time staff in there. So what are our available options have not really been brought to the board in a comprehensive way that this proposes. And so when you're talking about the lives at stake potentially with misutilizing that building, 21,000 is an easy decision to get real data and to be able to provide to the public. What direction do we go with a fire station? Do we cut and run at that location and look to a north station? These are the things that could come out of this feasibility study and should come out. We'll have more information to act on it, more actionable information. The second part of this is the police department and the review of what that building looks like. And so there's been discussions about a positioning the building itself so that maybe the building has a westward facing access point so that the parking lot is accessible off of Town Center. And so This is an area that I think is worth looking at in a very deep and comprehensive way too, because just as I mentioned to you during my board reports about the library and the director of the library talking about a proper library for a community our size, I started thinking about, when did we ever have a proper police department? And the building they're in now it has some advantages because they've used, and I think a lot of work that was done by our now supervisor. They've had a lot of innovations in that building to make the best of a warehouse, but it's in a warehouse district. It's a warehouse, and it's been repurposed, and I guess an argument could be made that it is a proper police station. But looking at it and looking at what we do long term, these two architectural feasibility studies are very, very well spent money, because these are millions of dollars of expenditures, and the health and safety of our first responders are at stake. So this is money well spent, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Joseph. Comments from the public?
I think everybody has a short memory. It goes all the way back to the police moratorium 2014, when couldn't get a millage passed. 2 millages failed. Didn't know what to do. Revenue wasn't coming in to support the police department. Luckily, one of the board members suggested a transfer from the general fund of $3.5 million. That shored up the police department until 2018. In 2018, there was approximately, when they merged the fire and police department for public safety, $3.3 million fund balance. 1.3 left in 2019 and 1.2 left in 2020. Not much left. There's nothing left in the fire equipment fund, building and equipment fund. If we keep spending like this, we have more outgoing funds, more expenditures than we do revenue right now. And the revenue's not increasing as much as the expenditures for public safety. And the problem is the general fund, when Supervisor Lovelock was here, Township was lucky enough that there was almost $11 million so he could transfer funds to support the police department. Current fund balance is $6 million and shrinking. So I don't know where we're getting the money to pay for the brick and mortar for these studies, because in reality, it's not there. And we're going to spend money for a study, and if we spend money on the brick and mortar, there's going to be an issue if we change in the economy again like it was 2009. Because what's going to happen is we're going to spend money on brick and mortar today, and we're going to lay off personnel, because that's where most of the cost is in public safety. Sorry, but I think you're going the wrong direction.
Further comments from the public? I have a motion by, I'll bring it back to the board. I have a motion by Trustee Joseph, supported by Clerk Barry, to approve item 9G. Clerk Barry.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Clerk Barry, aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye. Item 9H.
Item 9H is a recommendation from the CDBG Committee to enter into an agreement with Partners, Inc. for the design development phase, bid and award phase, and construction administration phase of the Senior Park Project Phase 2 in the amount of $15,250 from GL number 101-960-960000, and to execute the contract between Partners, Inc. and Chesterfield Township.
Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion by trustee Vosberg,
Second?
supported by clerk Berry. Director Sonnenberg.
Thank you. The Township Board approved an application for submittal of the 2021 CBDG Bricks and Mortar Grant in February 23rd, 2021. I'm at the Board of Trustees meeting. Chesterfield was awarded the CBDG Bricks and Mortar Grant Fund for Phase 2 of our senior park project that you can see out back behind our senior center, in the amount of $107,980. Sorry. The next step was to bring the board approval for architectural design and management of this project. Bless you. Our current ask is for $15,250 for partners that will manage the design and development, phase construction documents, bidding and award phase, and manage the construction process. Because as you know, CBDG, even if they're small, there's a lot of paperwork involved. So our request is to partner up with partners and move forward. The rendering that you see is not, that was our initial design. We've kind of scaled it back, so there'll be no area in the back. It'll just be an open pavilion attached to the building. We will provide an updated rendering on our website. But we're excited about the project. Our senior park's coming along. We've got a lot of positive feedback about that. And other communities have reached out to us trying to model the same setup, so we are excited. Any questions?
Comments from the board? Comments from the board? Comments from the public?
Paul Lafata, 48055 Maryland. Every year, the senior center gets a CDC block grant. It's usually somewhere between $90,000 and $100,000. That fund doesn't only support brick and mortar. What it does is it buys meals for our seniors. And currently, with our economy and the number of seniors that Chesterfield has, and the cost of food, we should be looking at putting money into supporting our seniors' well-being, and this wouldn't take priority. The other thing is the current phase out there, the cost of the current phase that I don't think is done, there was 300 feet of aluminum fencing that I don't see out there yet. That never took place. I don't know why we're using partners. This seems like an easy job for any engineer. I could do this on my drafting board in the basement in 3D and give you a drawing of that for bid purposes. But I don't think we utilize our internal skills at all, and it's always at a cost. But the cost that I'm worried about is if we're taking food out of our seniors' mouth right now, I have a problem with that. Thank you.
Further comments from the public? No further comments from the public. I'll bring it back up to the board. Trustee Vosberg.
Thank you. Just want to make a comment. I think this is for bricks and mortar. It's not for other, this particular CDBG money is not for some of the things that are used for lower income things. This is for bricks and mortar. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Committed funds for that project.
Thank you.
No further comments?
I'm sorry, I would just like to add one thing. So just to touch on our current project, there was a fence included. It arrived actually today. They're starting to put the holes in and set that fence, so we're in really good shape. Once we close out that fence, we have to get that done before we can apply for our final draft and close that project out. But we are on schedule. We just had a little delay in materials because of the climate that we're in.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
I have a motion by trustee Vosberg, supported by clerk Berry, to approve 9H. Clerk Berry?
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye. Item 9I.
Item 9I is a recommendation to approve the changes to APO 11-2019 purchasing policy effective October 26th, 2021.
Do I have a motion?
Move to approve as stated.
Motion by Clerk Berry. Support.
Support.
Trustee Vosberg. Deputy Duchesne, you want to address this?
Included in your APO is information from the Township Attorney's Office regarding formally recognizing as a public purpose the provision of certain supplies for the voluntary election workers and members of our Board of Review. It would then clarify that the procedures order recognizes a lawful expenditure in those aspects of providing that during training, during election time, and again, our Board of Review meetings that are held once a year. This APO change recognizes that, and as worded by the Township Attorney, meets the state law and the public purpose requirements of such expenditures. And we recommend the change be made so that we are in compliance with an activity which has been routinely approved by the board in bill payments, but has been in conflict for sometimes with the APO that was written, or it wasn't clear. I would say in certain cases, essential operations and elections have been permitted, but the supplies and services for that wasn't clear. So the APO now corrects that to recognize what has been the practice.
Thank you very much. Comments from the board? Trustee Anderson.
Thank you. Some of these positions you, Mr. Duchesne, you referenced, some of these are coveted. Some of these civilian appointments to these boards are actually coveted by our residents, probably majority of them. And I know in a time that we're living in, it might be, argument may be made as problematic to get election workers. I do know that, I believe that we did increase the amount these workers, these good citizens are paid for our elections. I used to have a problem with supplying, we started, I looked at some of the bills, I don't have it here, but it was Chef somebody provided a bunch of meals the last election here, or the last training. I don't know what kind of internal government, what type of a governor would be on these expenditures. And hey, what does it matter? I've been buying treats for the folks anyhow, and for the last few years it doesn't really matter. So I don't know why. I understand what you're saying, Mr. Duchesne, but whether you have a APO change or not, it's been going on. Thank you.
Trustee Joseph.
Just to kind of launch off the general theme for the Trustee Anderson put forth, the current administrative procedure order prohibits contributions involving per diem payments, mileage of officials to and from their residence to Township Hall or meeting rooms. That's now struck from the APO. Office refreshments, food plates, presents to officials. Those are not allowed under our previous APO. They're being struck from the proposed retirement gifts or employee retiree gifts, retroactive pay increases, private roads, list goes on. These are all struck from the current APO, and then it's replaced with, as our attorney advised us, not an exhaustive list of all approved funds, but really what you're talking about is an APO that we have violated for countless instances. And it speaks to why spend any time at all on an APO when we violate it, depending on, we did it last week when I suggested that the APO didn't afford a change of the agenda. Mr. Siebert said, well, those are just, in essence, those are board guidelines. The board can violate that whenever they want, and we do. So why all the expense associated with legal reviews and attempts to keep us in like a business-like environment when we just blow it out of the water whenever we feel like it anyway? What's the point? What is the point of this APO and all the work that you put in, the exhaustive opinion from our attorney, when it's just a rule that nobody, if you don't want to follow it, you just don't follow it? Why do we do this perpetually? And why again are we doing it here? That's rhetorical. You don't have to answer that.
Further comments from the board? Comments from the public?
Paul LaFata, 48055 Malin. It seems like Director Duchesne has put a Band-Aid on our purchasing APO because we put some, what I call weasel words in there and twisted them a little bit because it's not consistent with an email that I got from him on May 29, 2020, when I asked about it. Basically said, employees are employees and they don't get food. So somehow somebody must have twisted her arm and he put some weasel words in it, and it's okay to buy food now for election employees. Election employees get stipends too, which was supposed to be for ancillary costs that they incur when they go to work, but I guess that money doesn't get used. But it would really be nice if Director Duchesne would focus on the APO that really cost the township residents money. Our purchasing authorizations, it's clear that the department head doesn't ensure that the general ledger numbers are correct and the appropriations and the funding and everything is accurate, which is purchasing authorization number 3. Construction observation, we actually paid AEW for construction observation of the Veterans Facility, and they wouldn't even give us supporting documentation for the hours they worked. They wouldn't even give us timesheets. So that's another one. It seems like we don't really care about really managing the business. It seems like what we do is we make excuses for not following process and procedures. Thank you.
Further comments from the public?
John Spica, 53978 Connor Drive. It's a Band-Aid, all right. Mr. Duchesne is the cleanup man, is what I call it. I'm glad to see that a policy that's been violated by the clerk for the last 8+ years is finally corrected with what our APO is going to say. Our attorney did say, Mr. Duchesne, that it was a complete violation of the township's APO, and I think you're aware of that because I think you were CC'd on that email too. And if you need a copy of it, let me know. And my question is, we're changing the purchasing policy, but changing it and enforcing it are two different things. We've got a purchasing policy now, but we pick and choose what we're going to enforce. For example, our clerk decided to renovate an office that she's never in and overspent and never got board approval on it. The former supervisor told our deputy treasurer, or not our deputy treasurer, our deputy supervisor, to just, find a way and make it go away. I have an issue with that. That's not how things should be handled in the boardroom. And then the other issue is we've got an APO purchasing policy. Why are we spending money for the Historical Society that's not even approved. So having a policy and not following it, I mean, it makes no sense. So we're going to have a policy and follow it and enforce it, or we're not. Thank you.
Further comments from the public? Bring it back up to the board. Clerk Barry, you want?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I appreciate the board's consideration of this item, and I think that it's long overdue. Just for clarification, there never has been a violation of the purchasing policy in this regard. It was never disallowed by the purchasing policy, and the board has routinely approved the expenditure every year that I've been here, and they approved it for the clerk prior to that, and so on and so forth. There's never been a time that we can find ever that the board has ever disallowed that particular expenditure. And I think that the correction to the APO, it does maintain some consistency in that regard. I'd also like to just say just a few things with an election coming up, because it specifically relates to provisions for election workers and the work that they do. These workers that particularly are served by this expenditure are sequestered for the entire day. They are not allowed to leave by state law. We cannot allow them to leave. If they leave, they cannot return. So they are not allowed to leave to get food. And those days often will be 18, 19, sometimes 20-hour days that they must be sequestered. They can't even go to the bathroom unattended. They have to go in pairs and be attended by an election inspector. So it is a unique circumstance. As far as training and other expenditures with that regard, public purpose has been stated that it has to be available to the public, and we do make the provisions available to the public and have had the public participate. I will also point out to the board that we do utilize public funds. Oftentimes, this agenda alone, we've spent almost $500 on Halloween candy. That's more than what we're talking about for food for people who serve a necessary civic service. So I think that Halloween candy is great. I think it does serve a public purpose because it helps build community. And I think there's a value there. But I also argue that election workers serve an intrinsic value to the public in that they help facilitate the electoral process. And we do make those things available to the public. And the individuals, when we don't, are those who are sequestered by state law. So I appreciate the consideration, and I believe that this APO change does make consistent with those responsibilities that I believe that we have in administering elections. Thank you.
Thank you, Clerk Barry. Trustee Joseph, yes.
I was okay. I was just going to simply vote no and keep my mouth shut on this, but when you equate Halloween candy as a public purpose, it's a direct misrepresentation of the Halloween candy purchase. So the leisure services will host a daddy-daughter dance. They serve food there. In order to go to the event, you purchase a ticket. So if leisure services purchases $500 in Halloween candy and they have an event where they charge participants $10 to come in and partake in the event, it's not a gratuitous gift, it's part of the programming. So to say Halloween candy is just as important as election workers is not a fair comparison. And I think you're smart enough to know that, and that was not an appropriate comparison. The balance of your argument I'm okay with, I disagree, but to equate $500 in Halloween candy as just as paramount and as important the public purpose as feeding election workers, who are here sequestered 19 hours and can't use the bathroom and all of that, is a misrepresentation, and it's not a nice one. So I just wanted to correct the record there.
Thank you, Trustee Joseph. I have a motion by Clerk Barry, supported by Trustee Vosberg, to approve item 9I. Clerk Barry.
Clerk Barry, aye. Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
No.
Trustee Joseph.
No.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye. Item 9J.
Item 9J is consideration of a Freedom of Information Act appeal known as FOIA number 449.
So moved.
So motion by Trustee Joseph,
Support.
supported by Trustee Anderson.
Point of clarification. What is the motion?
The motion is to consideration of a Freedom of Information Act FOIA appeal known as FOIA number 449.
Okay, so it's just to allow for the discussion of, is that what you mean?
Yes,
Thank you.
consideration.
All right.
Thank you.
So, with that being said, I will defer to council, Township Council, Christine Anderson, to please explain the appeal process and the potential action by the board.
Thank you, Supervisor Kersten. First and foremost, Mr. Lafada submitted a FOIA request to the township on July 30th, 2021. That request was for specific public records in connection with a specific township-owned cell phone. The records requested were a copy of the Verizon phone log that was submitted with the invoice, as well as date, time, and phone numbers for each call and text made. Township staff provided all available records to Mr. Lafada. However, the records provided were not exactly what he requested because Verizon does not provide a copy of the phone log together with the invoice. Mr. Lafada believed that certain records were not provided. The Freedom of Information Act provides that if somebody who requests records believes they did not receive everything they requested and that was in error, they have a right to appeal. That appeal can be started at the Township Board, or that individual can start right with the Circuit Court. Mr. Lafada chose to start with the Township Board. And that is what is on the agenda tonight. And this board received a detailed legal opinion written by me outlining the request, the response, and the applicable law. After the board hears from Mr. Lafada, the board will then need to make a decision, and that decision will need to be made tonight in order to comply with the time frame set forth by the Freedom of Information Act. That decision should be either to uphold the response of township staff, to reverse the response and order disclosure of additional records, or some combination thereof. With that, I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Supervisor. You go ahead.
Mr. Lafada, if you'd like to address the board, you have a reasonable amount of time to discuss this matter.
Just make some points of interest. Basically, it's legal counsel's opinion, and it's based on a hypothesis on the limited evidence that she was supplied by the township. I don't think that legal counsel had any contact with Verizon, tried to access any logs or anything. Basically, legal counsel's opinion is based on a hypothesis, based on evidence provided by the township. The information is electronically available. I access it. I had some friends access it. I had my daughter access it. And what I asked for when I came in originally, I brought a sample. I showed it to our finance director, and our finance director said, I'm very familiar with that. I've seen that before. Okay, so the information is electronically available. I did not ask for a cut and paste. All I asked for was a printout of the electronic phone log that's available at Verizon. The format that was posted on the Verizon website is to validate customer billing. When you get your invoice and it says you used 1,700 minutes, like Director Sonnenberg gets, they have to have a way of validating it. It's their phone log that they have. They have a phone log for every call that's made and received, the time duration that it is, and the number that it came in from, or the number that you called. The phone bill, if you look at Exhibit 3, the phone bill invoice, there's a note on the lower left-hand box. It says, have more questions about your charges, get details from usage at verizonwireless.com. That's where I go to get my information, and that's where it's available. The other thing that was interesting is the list that I was provided, which is Exhibit 4, is all one day. It starts at 12:07 a.m., 12 minutes after midnight, and ends at 8:48 p.m. All labeled pictures, only one day out of 2 billing cycles. That's all right. The other thing that's really amazing is that this was done by Josh Sonnenberg. I didn't know that Josh Sonnenberg was the person that had the skill sets to pull down what I asked for from Verizon. But look at Exhibit A, and you'll see a letter from Jennifer that says it was done by Josh Sonnenberg. Okay, so I witnessed our treasurer, while sitting at this, or speaking at the podium, text on her cell phone. I was told that the past supervisor, Accavetti, and Treasurer Elliott were trying to suppress this information. It's just what I was told. I know where the 42nd District Court is. I've already called the American Civil Liberties Union in City Detroit for help, and they said if I get a negative response, file a brief, and they'll help me. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Bring it back to the board. Bring it to the board for discussion. Before I bring it to the board.
Oh, sorry.
Any further public comment?
John Spica, 53978 Connor Drive. My comment is in regards to Mr. LaFata's FOIA request. I myself submitted a FOIA request to the township. My FOIA request had to be submitted a total of 4 times. At the time Cindy Grenia was here, I requested for all emails between Treasurer Elliott and the former supervisor, Mr. Accavetti. I had a clear understanding of what I wanted. Cindy Grenia had a clear understanding on what I wanted, but our deputy supervisor, Mr. Duchesne, had a different interpretation. So 2 people had the same interpretation, but the deputy supervisor read that in a different way. So after 4 requests, I finally got 2 packets. One that Ms. Grenia made up, and one that Ms. Niza finally gave me. So I'm in the process of going through that. My experience was not a pleasant one. It was like pulling teeth to try to get some information. You know, our board members talk about being transparent and wanting the public to know and everything's out there, but when you come to this township and you ask for the information, you don't get the information. So when I finally reworded it, it was basically reworded the same way, but going through the information, and I'll report back to this board, just basically on what I've sifted through, I don't feel that I've gotten everything that I've asked for. So I may have to, join Mr. LaFata with the ACLU. But that was my experience in trying to get a FOIA request out of this township. It was not easy. It was very complicated. Again, when I dealt with the person in charge of the FOIA request, she understood what I wanted. She said, we're on a clear understanding, but the third person, which was the deputy supervisor, he was at a different understanding. So I don't know how 2 people can interpret something one way. It's when you don't want to give somebody the information that they're requesting, then you try to, make it look like they're asking for something else that they're not asking for. In the original first documents that were given to me, I received documents that I didn't even ask for. They weren't even related to my FOIA request. So, and it took over 6 weeks to finally get my, documents that they gave me. And like I said, I still don't feel that I received everything that I asked for. I just wanted to give you my experience as a resident. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any further comments from the public? Mr. LaFatta, is there anything further you'd like to add for the board to hear? Thank you. I'll bring it back up to the board for consideration. Trustee Joseph.
Questions I have are on the exhibits themselves. And if I could maybe start towards the back with Exhibit 4. We have an email. We have an email from Michelle Niza, from Jennifer Hartung to Cindy Grenia and council, with CCs to Supervisor Kersten, Steve Duchesne, Vicky Bauer, and Christina Falk as the CCs. And she indicates in that email, thanks to the help of Josh with Verizon, I was able to get the report. Is that an employee of Verizon that she's talking about?
Yes, that is our account manager through Verizon. It is not Josh Sonnenberg.
Thanks for that clarification. So when we go through trying to satisfy the exhibits, we have a list of build messaging details, Exhibit 4, that appears to be Treasurer Elliott's, I'm assuming Township cell phone, that number ending in 8130.
That's correct.
So there are pages and pages of what's incoming messages, pics, domestic, with multiple phone numbers. That, I mean, I know that we try to routinely use township equipment for township purposes, but why would that have been released in that list? Is that, didn't seem to be consistent with the request, or is it, in your opinion? And I say that only because there are, I mean, she could have communicated with family members that maybe, and is that a risk that you take using a township device in a FOIA situation?
No, it's not a risk you take. If it was personal, they could have been redacted.
So they have really not, the fact that it's a township phone, if it has nothing to do with township government, it's not subject to FOIA, is council's position?
The phone number would not be. I would recommend that if it was a personal phone number, the phone number be redacted.
Yeah, because the person doing business with a government phone maybe doesn't want to appear in a public FOIA, and that's reasonable.
The information would still be provided, just not the number.
I see. So, as we heard from Treasurer Fata saying that what he was concerned about was what he believes he viewed use of the cell phone, and was following up on whether or not that conversation was with the former supervisor and asking for, would he not be afforded the phone number of the individual that he suspects she was talking to?
Well, the Freedom of Information Act provides the public with access to records.
Okay.
Not specific information. The records he requested were, dates, times, phone numbers for the months of June and July. And that's what was provided.
In your opinion, does any of the staff changes complicate this in any way? And I ask that because I had, this FOIA request has been around for quite a while. I had some conversations with the previous FOIA coordinator who had a much different opinion about records and so forth. So is there some confusion associated with the staff that has been handling And like in the email correspondence, you have a number of different people handling this FOIA. Why and can we streamline that process? Should we streamline that process?
Well, with the FOIA, there's one FOIA coordinator, and that person is responsible for receiving the FOIA and giving the response. That individual doesn't know everything about every department, so when a request comes in, they reach out to other departments for assistance in providing the answer. But it is that person that signs on the bottom line, and it is their responsibility. And this FOIA was responded to previous to the last FOIA coordinator leaving, and all the information was gathered prior to her leaving, so I don't think any staff changes complicated this request.
Okay, thank you.
Any further comments from the board? Any further discussion? That being said, I will entertain a motion for action for, on item 9J. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion to uphold the action of township staff with regards to Freedom of Information Act request number 449.
Support.
Motion by Clerk Barry to uphold this, and I'll let you restate that, to uphold the decision of legal counsel, supported by Trustee Vosberg. Comments from the public?
Just point of clarification, I think it was to
Please.
uphold the response of the employee.
That's correct. The FOIA coordinator? Yes, uphold the decision of the township office staff and legal counsel. Comments from the public?
John Speaka, 53978 Connor Drive. I think when you guys vote now, I think Treasurer Elliott should abstain because it's a conflict of interest, in my opinion.
Since this is a motion and it's a board agenda item, and it's going to uphold the fact that I'm not getting the information that I think I want, the meeting minutes need to be stated as such, so, because I need that documentation when I go to civil court. Thank you. But the meeting minutes need to be worded accordingly so that it is understandable at the 42nd District Court. Thank you.
Any further comments from the public? I'll bring it back up to the board. Trustee Joseph.
Yeah, in terms of the, both comments, I don't know that there's an issue with, somebody not voting. I don't see it as a conflict. It's a simple FOIA request, but I'd leave that to council. With regard to the request for minutes, we don't have a verbatim transcript of the, record. The video is typically what's used. But in terms of the stating of the motion, I understood it very clearly, which was to simply uphold the decision of the FOIA coordinator in that the, as was displayed out in our executive summary, it is the belief of the FOIA coordinator that the FOIA has been satisfied to the best of the township's ability, and that is the motion that is before us. I don't know if it's a combination of the specifics and the wording of what it was that the individual was looking for in the FOIA. I think very clearly there's a concern about transparency, and I don't know that it's a difficult situation, because as I look at the request, I can see where the letter of the request is potentially adopted, and from a legal standpoint, there's even been some extension of additional courtesies that might not even be required. The spirit of the request, however, is what concerns me, and a concern about texting and transparency seems to be the source of this request. And so I don't know that we've done everything that we can to address the spirit of the concern. Although I'm confident in the legal opinion, I don't know how successful the petitioner will be seeking relief in a court, because it looks to me like, you know, again, we have excellent legal counsel who's looked at this, and I'm confident there. But I do give some credence to the petitioner's request about the reliance of the legal opinion coming from staff and individuals who potentially maybe don't want to see what the petitioner believes is actually going on. So I'm concerned about it, and I will be voting no. I think that the petitioner is deserved of knowing what's going on with his government officials on the device that he pays for when they're communicating potentially with other individuals during board actions. So I'll be voting no on that. Thank you.
Trustee Anderson?
I am in total agreement with Trustee Joseph on that, everything he said. No reflection on legal counsel. I'm sure that's sound, but the process that brings us here today over the last couple of months, I have a lot of questions about myself. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments from the board? I have a motion by Clerk Barry, supported by Trustee Vosberg, to uphold the decision of the township staff in regards to FOIA number 499 and including legal advice. Clerk Barry.
Clerk Barry, aye. Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
No.
Trustee Joseph.
No.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye. Number 10, addendums, there are none. Number 11, public comments, comments from the public. Time limit is 5 minutes, and the clock will start once you start speaking.
John Speaka, 53978 Connor Drive. This is titled, You Can't Handle the Truth. Trustee Vosberg, there was no job interview required to run for office of Chesterfield Township Trustee. You did not need to pass a job interview with the Chesterfield residents to run for office. You did not have to prove you have adequate business management skill sets, any specific expertise, or pass any tests. In fact, the only high marks you needed was political acceptance and connections. What a crazy concept. What this means is a politician like Trustee Vosberg, politicians are people who will say or do anything to get elected or gain power. Politicians' campaigns spend tax money on what benefits them and makes them look good. In the right political party can get elected and given a position on the Chesterfield Township Board with absolutely zero business management skill sets or experience. How is a politician like Trustee Vosberg expected to succeed when she knows little to nothing about running a private sector business organization, creating financial stable budgets, and managing people? The how. Trustee Vosberg's unenforceable ethics policy and the manipulation of the Chesterfield Township Board rules. Trustee Vosberg's goal, the ethics policy, was to tarnish the reputation of the Chesterfield elected officials that did not agree with her personal political agenda. The manipulation of the board rules not only limiting the residents from speaking, but Trustee Vosberg also wanted to limit board members' comments to 5 minutes. Remove any opportunity for a Chesterfield resident or even a fellow board member to speak and question or expose the truth. In the corporate boardroom, you address the issues and answer the questions. Resorting to boardroom antics or making a premature motion to adjourn at the corporate board meeting prior to a question and issue resolution will get you fired. There are no requirements to be a township board member. You do not need a master's degree in business administration. Chesterfield residents want an ample opportunity to express what they expect of their elected officials and want not to be dictated to what board rules, told to be silent and dismissed to sit in a corner. The motion to adjourn, Trustee Vosberg, in conclusion, with Trustee DeMink to elude board member comments on financial and health-threatening issues is a sign you can't handle the truth. Trustee Vosberg, your fourth vote has diminished in value. The motion to adjourn failed. Past Supervisor Akavetti's gone. He did leave behind the legacy of a fitting quote, Chesterfield residents deserve better. Chesterfield residents want their elected officials to be someone who does everything for the common good of the residents they represent. Thank you. This is written by Paul LaFata. At the last board meeting, fascism is rampant, and it definitely came out. Trustee DeMink immediately wanted to adjourn the meeting, and that was quickly supported by Trustee Vosberg. So as residents, you need to listen to us, you need to hear us, and you've already cut the residents' time by 40%. It's not like there's a packed room of residents that come up here and keep you guys till 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. You get paid, you're not doing it for free. If you don't want to be in that position and you don't want to listen and you don't want to hear what we have to say, then resign. Don't run. Thank you.
Further public comments?
Paul LaFata, 48055 Mallard. I'd like to thank Trustee Joseph for actually trying to answer some of the questions that were brought to the podium at the last board meeting. Evidently, everybody, or at least two of the members, want to duck and run. That's not the way to serve your residents. It's poor. I'm starting to, and some of the residents I talk to, my neighbors, we're starting to lose trust in the township board. When you spend funds and you can't account for them financially accurately, it's just a sign that we don't care. We don't care about your money. We don't care about the funds. You need to take it to heart. And the problem is we're trying to fix things, but we're really not fixing things because there's that thing called responsibility and accountability. And that is what makes process and procedures work, because somebody is held responsible, and when they're not, and they don't follow process and procedures, they are held accountable. That doesn't happen in Chesterfield Township. It just doesn't happen. And there's a problem. It's big. And it's not going to get fixed by a BS&A software package. The purchasing package right now is BS&A. Problem is it gets circumvented. Everything gets circumvented, and nobody up there really cares. And when it just keeps getting rubber stamped, it is a problem, because we don't have the funds that we should to sufficiently run the township right now. We need to look at continuous improvement and how to reduce operating costs, and we're not doing that. We're not doing that efficiently. And I've done this my whole life, and I don't care what anybody says. I don't care what Director Duchesne says. We're not looking at it the right way. We're not moving the needle, and we're not holding people accountable. It's just like a inspector for the water and sewer department, and you look at his gas bill, and his gas bills mean that he had to drive 170 miles a day so that he had to fill his tank up in a day and a half. So when that person drives 170 miles a day, how efficient is he? How many inspections does he make? And when you put a tracker in there, and as soon as you put the tracker in there, he only drove 47 miles and made 2 inspections that were 15 minutes each. That's the problem. Nobody's addressing it. That's continuous improvement. Cost of gas is going up, and the taxpayers and the water rate payers are suffering. Thank you.
Further comments from the public?
Before I start today, I'd like to tell Clerk Barry, as tough it's become to get people to work the election, particularly after the last election. If it takes food, even if it takes a limo to pick them up and get them to work the election, I'm all for it. What I'm here to talk about kind of is consistent with what happened today in all of the options you're looking at and all the agenda items where you just spent money, even though it's come out that basically the money isn't there. And this came to me before this came to light, but it's a sign of what goes on. When Supervisor Accavetti left, he was followed by Director Coddington, or Supervisor Coddington, and left the Water Department with a heck of a bill, I think. They didn't meet the budget, and there's a reason for it. Director Kersten is trying to purchase a financial system to get control of the money, and requested Plant Moran to benchmark other water systems to see how they operate, so we can get our water department into a position that it's working properly and working under the money that's collected. Back in 2015, when we had the Water Rate Reserve Board, basically we were asked by Lovelock to determine whether AEW, who had proposed a 20% water hike every year for the next 4 years, was accurate and needed. We went through the whole system, because the only way you can tell that is determine what's needed to run the water rate, run the water department. They were, at that time, bringing in about $12 to $13 million a year in revenue, and in actual water and sewer purchases were about $6.5 million, which left them between $6 and $7 million to operate the system. We looked at basically how much it cost to operate the system. It looked at the costs from the sewer and water departments, looked at the operating costs, the bond department obligations, and with the advice of the current, or the then water departments, basically allowed about $2 million per year within monies that were being collected to replace aging water systems with basically depreciation. That was fine. Everybody was happy with that. When Supervisor Accavetti came in, he took over the department, basically. He ran the water department. Since then, things that did happen that should have happened. Things happened that he tried using the water department for studies. He tried using the money. He had an idea of how he was going to develop the Northwest Quadrant. Money was spent on that. Money was spent on a lot of different things that we don't even know about. And it was approved by this board when they were come out, because basically he had 3 other people on this board that would go along with anything he wanted. Now, Since then, the only thing that was been changed is the monies for the increased cost of water and the increased cost for sewer from Detroit and Macomb were added to the bills. And everything should have been fine. But here we are. I kept asking every year since that time, when are we going to start replacing water lines? Every year I got, well, not this year, not this year. Until finally this past year, they did the 23 Mile Road. Pardon me? 10 seconds. Okay. Turns out, when they did that, I checked and said, okay, how much is in the enterprise fund left? It was $11 million, which is what it was back in 2015.
Thanks, sir.
Now with no operating cost or no line replacement, there should have been at least $20 million in there.
Got to cut you off,
And
sir.
it's not
I've
there.
got to be fair to everybody. I got to cut you off. Thank you.
I'd like to leave this with you.
You can leave it with Mr. Duchesne.
Mike Horton, 50393 Bauer. A few things I wanted to mention. One is, according to the state, this is Fire Prevention Week, so please take note of the importance of fire safety and just overall safety within your homes, within your places of work, any type of community buildings. No points of exits and accessibility with wherever you go, and in your homes, check your smoke alarms, carbon monoxide alarms. Bless you. Make sure you have any type of equipment like fire extinguisher at your home to utilize in case of any emergencies. I would like to echo what some of my fellow commenters had said regarding the last meeting's ending. I think that if there is an issue of doing a job as an elected official, you make it known that this is not what you want to do, and because there are other people in the community who are willing to step up and do such a job. It's very insulting to the general public that you're not willing to do the bare basic of political actions in governmental functions as an elected official. And then this sort of reevaluates everything I've tried to bring up over past years, really, which would be the prioritization of government that we've seen tonight. I think that the discussions regarding public safety, especially with dealing with Fire Station 2, is part of that prioritization. What is the township's main priorities moving forward? And I feel that whereas I've seen a lot of progress happen in the last few months at the discretion of the new supervisor, and I appreciate the progression we've made, I think it is worth noting for the township residents, why is it that it seems like we've lost many years due to, I don't want to say negligence, but just a poor progression in the past. It seems like we're playing catch up right now. And we're trying to dip our hands into too many areas, and especially now with, as you've seen with the nationwide labor shortages and our current supply chain issues, we're dealing with discussions that we can't utilize vehicles for years or for extended periods of time. And so it's great to see that we're seeing progression, but are we dealing with a situation where everything's happening too late now? Last thing I'd like to close on, though, is I'd like to give a shout out and a thank you to Wendy Jones and Rotary Club. They were at mile 15 at the Detroit Free Press Marathon, and it was a brutal race, and those of us who competed in it very much appreciated for people who are willing to step up and volunteer, to stand around for several hours, giving out water, food, and a lot of encouragement. So thank you.
Further comments from the public?
Wendy Jones, 50826 West Shamrock. Sometimes we put in our time and think that people don't pay attention. I would like to tell Donald Coddington, Director of Public Works, that people do pay attention and thank him for his years of service to Chesterfield. He did a good job, and I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. No further comments from the public. I'll bring it up to the board. Trustee Anderson, start with you tonight.
Thank you. Going to start with me so we can continue the meeting. Okay. Our last Mike, your remarks, you made midway in your remarks, you made a reference to our board members here, maybe in general, of people that are in elective office, either serve the public or move on. I'm paraphrasing what you said. And yeah, I think there is two groups of people that sit in elective office. There's politicians and then there's public servants. The politicians, you're not going to get out of there. They're not going to give it up. They can't give it up. They have to stay here for a lot of reasons. And I'll let you connect those dots. Some of the speakers here, I know they might fluff some feathers, but they're veterans of the police layoff moratorium of nearly 8 years ago. They served as volunteer residents on a water and sewer study group. Each one of those were about year-long operations. I attended them myself just to see what they were doing. Those individuals have a tremendous body of knowledge that might compete with the wisdom we have up here. They saw the guts and the garbage and the pluses that go on in our local government. And I just want to hit all things. They have a lot of knowledge. They've seen how contracts work. They came up with great recommendations. One of them served 4 years as our trustee after a career in the private sector doing basically the same thing. I consider his remarks regarding finances sacrosanct. He has some good points, and sometimes I don't understand what he's saying, but he knows where he's going on it, and I respect these individuals for what they say. And with that, I'll just say be careful this weekend with the little folks out there walking around. You know what it is, Halloween. Be careful, and we'll see you in a couple weeks. Thank you.
Trustee Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Couple of issues involving some issues that we took up tonight. The public comments, again, I appreciate them. I would like to mention to you, I was really racing to get here. The County Board of Commissioners met today, and it was budget season. It is budget season, so their budget process is they're dealing with a number more departments than we have, you know, and a number significantly more employees and so forth. But the process involves each department being summoned to the Board of Commissioners, and they address their budget wants, requests. They substantiate the monies that they spent in the previous year. And tonight, this afternoon, it started at 3 o'clock. It was still going when I raced out of there to get to here. The juvenile court budget, the circuit court budget, the sheriff's department was there, and Prosecutor Lucido was there with his entire cast of APAs, and they were in the front row and they were talking about the budget. But the meeting started with public comments and the residents, anybody who wished to address the board. And there was an interesting speaker. And I know him. I'm sure many of us know Mr. Kuzmano. He is a trustee in neighboring Macomb Township. He took issue with some issues that were going to be in front of the Board of Commissioners, and he did not mince words. He went to the podium and he read the dictionary definition of hypocrite. And I'm not going to redo his entire argument, but he took the Board of Commissioners to task in a very personal way. And he asked them if they supported this, how they didn't meet the definition of hypocrite. And there was no motion to stop that. There was no statements that this is a business meeting and we don't do that. And it was the new commissioners, or several of the new commissioners, who in their deliberations attempted to address Mr. Kuzmano's concern. Again, the issue is not as relevant as the process. And I was very proud of that commissioner. Wasn't my commissioner. My commissioner was hanging in there and answering questions with the best of them. But there were no questions that resulted in a we're not going to answer that. This is a business meeting, and your tone and your name calling, and none of that. It was just a resident concern, and I think that's the appropriate way to go. I don't have any issue with as many residents that come to that podium that want to ask this board questions. I believe that is your right, and I further believe that we have an obligation to attempt to answer those questions to the best of our ability. Some people see it differently. They legitimately see it differently, that this meeting is called to discuss a predetermined list of agenda items, and that is the entirety of the scope, and that any further comments should be done offline somewhere. You can meet with the constituent or resident, and you can address those concerns somewhere else. I don't see it that way, and our APOs didn't really support this position that it was just the agenda and then we shut up and nobody gets to answer any questions. It has been a mutually accepted past practice. It is a trust that the residents have with us, and I'll honor that trust to the best of my ability. It doesn't matter if you agree with me or not. And there have been many times that people get to the podium and they have a personal issue with me, and I can be coarse and I can be rude, and so I deserve some of that. But I'm always going to try to answer the questions that are posed to us, and Trustee Anderson made a very good point about a fellow board member that we served with during our 4 years. He didn't come to this board from a political background. His business was efficiencies. His business was process. And it was always examining continuous improvement. And when he showed up here for his first 6 months, he was terrifically frustrated. And I said to him, you know, there's a bit of a learning curve, and I remember his response was that he had an obligation to the supervisor at the time because he wasn't the supervisor, and it was not something he felt was appropriate to just go and put his ideas above and beyond the supervisor. He felt that the supervisor needed time to understand that he was the supervisor, and he was, in essence, very much staying in his lane. But as time went on, he continued to talk about the exact things that he talks about when he comes to the podium, and I have a tremendous amount of respect. And there are times when I go home disappointed in myself because I know in my heart that he's right. And one of the things that he said over and over tonight on these agenda items is that we are violating our purchase policy, and we consistently are sort of winging it. And so when an executive summary comes to the board and there's a need for a financial review and the box is checked, but the account that it's coming out of is not updated, he's right. I'm with him through 80% of that, and so when I approve the expenditure, it was because I know that the money is listed in the account, but the ledger is not updated in the way that it could be and should be. So when we do a finance review and we're referencing, well, we're not going to purchase the tractor that we purchased and instead we're going to purchase the salt, that's not the way that it was done in the private sector where this individual who ran a pretty tight ship ran it. I wish we could get there, but I do have a belief that we can make the budget amendment, and the money is in the account, and we're not spending money that we don't have. Although I do agree, we seem to collect a lot of things, and so I appreciate the trustees who say I have complete confidence and so forth. But the reality is we purchased a $20,000 lawnmower predicated on the idea that it was a unique piece of equipment that would accomplish a unique task, and it was service delivery for the kids that play on that ball field to have this piece of equipment. And then, as has been said, within a board meeting or two, we mothballed that equipment and contracted out. We got somebody else to cut that grass. When we purchase a chipper that we're told is dangerous, too dangerous to offer as a public good, because the more times you use it, the more increased risk you have of losing life, limb, and whatever, why would we be in that business? Because if you're only going to roll the equipment out every couple, 2-3 times a year, what's the safety protocols that'll be in place there? And is that an accident waiting to happen? So it's very conflicting, and we don't have a consistent adherence to these APOs that we seem to spend the better part of the last 4 years debating. APOs involving board rules and the appropriate way to manage an agenda. If you're not satisfied with an agenda item, you make a motion at the front end when the agenda is approved to strike board comments. I don't think it's appropriate to wait for 5 or 6 people to come forward with questions about their physical safety and environmental safety and then make a motion to adjourn. This is absolutely wrong, and I applaud those who stood up, and as Trustee Anderson, they have put in what we would agree would be sweat equity in this community. They've been a part of a lot of volunteer committees and boards that looked at real serious problems. No pay, no compensation, no food, no buffets, nothing, just an interest in your community. So they come to the podium, they ask me a question, I'm going to try to answer that. The last thing I would like to remind the board was my opening comments regarding the library. I would like to have some discussion with any board member who's interested in talking about possible ideas that maybe I can take back to the library board as the conduit between this board and the library, because I think there are a number of really good joint use opportunities that we should be exploring. I know, Supervisor Kersten, that's something you have ongoing with the library director, but there's some, as we have a division on the board, I think there are some interests from individual board members that should also be part of the dialogue, and opening that up on a really bigger scale, I think would be a good idea. I could go for days. I'm good. Thank you.
Trustee Deming.
First, I'd like to say congratulations to Don J.R. Coddington. Thanks for being with the township. Thanks for all the years you've done everything. For the 17 years I've been up here, you've been a great employee, and thank you for everything else. With regards to the library and rec building, David, I don't have a problem with that. That's has come up before in conversation with the prior supervisor and with Brad. I think you were part of that when there's a possibility of a building to combine the two. I have no problem on that at all. That's I think it'd save a lot of money and everything else. So I know Brad's looking at that too. The comments regarding Trustee Vosberg and my motion 2 weeks ago, nobody on this board had an idea. So you can take your conspiracy theory and throw it right out that door. She had no idea I was going to do that. And why I did it? I threw a grenade out there. And Dave, it's for you. Dave, it's for you because I want you to reflect on a conversation that you and I had a week before Brad was sworn in. You and I talked about a few things between you and I and the way some things were going to go. So jar your memory on a conversation that you and I had a week before Brad was sworn in after we agreed to put Brad in that spot. That's why I threw that grenade out there. I knew it wasn't going to pass. But the conspiracy theory that Kathy had anything to do with it, no way, folks. That was all me. Nobody up here knew I was going to do that. I knew it wasn't going to pass. But I sure got a reaction out of a lot of people. But Dave, think about the conversation that you and I had. It was one just with you and I. All right. So that's all I have to say. Be safe. The kids out there for Halloween. Hopefully the weather cooperates. Thank you and have a good night, everyone.
Thank you. Trustee Vosberg.
Thank you. I too want to thank JR for his years of service with us. I don't think he's completely done yet. He's got some time before his retirement, but it was on the agenda, so I'd like to bring that up. And continued thanks to our firefighters during Firefighter Month and all year long. We appreciate all the service. And my last comment is I am so glad to see that that bridge over the drains out here was completed on time. I was very skeptical, but if I'd taken a bet, I would have lost, but that would have been a good bet to lose. So I'm glad the work is done. Thank you.
I did lose a bet, just so you know. Treasurer Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Also want to send congratulations to Don Coddington on his years of service, and Halloween hours are on Sunday from 6 to 8. Thank you, everybody, and have a good night.
Clerk Berry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank the DPW department and staff for assisting us in moving our election worker training due to the bridge project. I had to move that training that traditionally we'll take here at the office, had to be moved to the DPW department. Thank you for your assistance in helping us with that and with allowing us to use your facility over there. Actually kind of like it better than the one here, so we might be asking for that again in the future. So thank you for your cooperation and your availability for us. That was great. Secondly is would like to wish everyone, all Wolverines and Spartans, good luck this coming week. How do I do that when they're both playing against each other, right? But, you know, we're politicians. We got to hedge our bets, right? So, but I will say, well, in that case, I think so. I think we have to go both right now. But at the end of the day, I will say, just leave everyone with this, and that is, go green.
I'm going to be a little bit longer. Just to cover some things that were said here that I want to make clear. I think since I've taken over, I've tried to, I've always worked to try and improve processes and procedures that may not have been clear or may have been misguided. So, first comment is attended Ascension Hospital's groundbreaking on 26 Mile Road, which took place Friday. We have an issue there. It needs sewer in that entire corridor. So I will be working with engineering to bring up some sort of solution to address that. And there are some plans in place that we're working on right now. Trustee Joseph, I have a meeting tomorrow with Ms. Madsen at 9 a.m. and you are more than welcome, and any other board member that would like to come in and sit down and discuss some of those opportunities that we all, I think they'd be a benefit across the board. Again, not knowing where she's going or the library board is going or what their plans are, but I think as creating some sort of joint operation with them just enhances all of us better. Don Coddington, I would have had him stay so we could recognize him tonight, but he had some other commitments. I would like the opportunity to invite him back to the next board meeting and actually give him some recognition that he deserves for his years of service here. I don't think you will ever find anybody in this township with a bigger heart and a bigger passion for this township and the employees and his employees. So well-deserved, and I appreciate everything he's done personally for me, just being a friend here. A lot of words that were said. We don't care. There's no responsibility. There's no accountability. There's no clear direction, mediocrity. I'm kind of taking offense to those words because that's not who I am, and that's not who I demand people around, particularly employees in this building, be. I've been here since July, had a huge learning curve, but every day it's about trying to make this township and the systems that we use better. BS&A was mentioned. Yes, we've had BS&A here, and unfortunately it's been limited use, particularly the purchase order system. Trying to corral and trying to orchestrate and manage how that system is going to integrate into this township to where department heads have the ability to manage their budgets, it's going to take some time. And it's unfortunate that one of the speakers, one of the residents, said that we're in catch-up. We're always trying to catch up to things. You're right, we are. We're way behind. Way behind in technology and systems and processes, and those are general terms, but every day it's a dedication to try and fix something that's so outdated, old, antiquated, and really doesn't provide an effective service to the residents. The salt dome. Salt dome's being disposed of. That whole parcel of property, which I already met, discussed with the board, we got a plan we'll bring to the board to try and demolish it. We are not buying bulk salt to put in a dome. We're looking at bag salt, and then obviously we have the county that we can buy from. So all those things are being considered. It's not just a willy-nilly, hey, we're gonna buy some salters and then go get a salt dome. No, there's a plan and a process in place. Much like the chipper. There is a policy that was developed, and we are still refining it for the chipper use, when it can be used, and along with that line is snow plowing during a snowstorm. One of my first, when I was first became supervisor, one of the first calls is, hey, our chipper's down and we need to go chip branches. Okay, what do? What's the past practice? What's the written document? Well, we don't have one. No fault to those individuals that did it, but the direction was, okay, let's come up with a policy. When are we gonna do it? How are we gonna do it? Is it effective? Is it worthwhile? And they've spent the last 3 months evaluating that and making this proposal for the chipper specifically, but it also goes into snow removal. What are we gonna do when the snow comes and the county is overwhelmed and we get resident calls about, hey, nobody's plowing our subdivisions? We've asked for that policy, and again, we'll present it to the board can scrutinize it, look at it, and see how we implement it. I thank the board for the architectural plans here. I've been very fortunate in my time and career, and particularly in public safety. I've had a lot of advocates that really promoted the department, particularly when I became chief and public safety director. I have, and I recognize that. One of the unfortunate things that I came in here with is this building. This building is not friendly to employees. We have repurposed furniture that is so big and bulky that it consumes about 70% of the actual floor space that the general employees work in. It's not efficient. I can't even tell you where a computer sits in this building because there's no network design. The reason there's no network design for IT is because there's cable in the roof or in the walls everywhere, and nobody knows what they are. It's literally embarrassing. I can't believe that it was allowed to get to that point where we're playing catch-up. The IT staff is busy. Yes, we're trying to get and do the right things, the right evaluations every day. I don't like the word mediocrity because every employee here is trying to do the best every day, and we will work to continue to try and make them better so mistakes aren't made. The Historical Village, I believe those approvals or those requests for expenditures at the Historical Village was approved by the board. The unfortunate thing or the fortunate thing with Historical Village is township property, township owned. No matter what happens there, we own it. We are responsible for it. If something is broke, we have to fix it. And that comes directly from our legal counsel, who I've had discussions with, what can we do to fix it and solve it to where it doesn't become a burden. It's not intended to be a burden. It's intended to be a marquee for the township, but obviously it needs continued maintenance and care. Transparency. I am all for transparency across the board. There is nobody here that will hide a document, bury a document, and it's unfortunate that this FOIA request had to go this route because I think that we, as far as I'm concerned, we've done everything we can to provide every piece of document to anybody who requests it. And yes, there is a portion of that we're going to streamline and we're going to fix, and it's been addressed. And the last comment I have is Mr. Sonnenberg doesn't approve contracting out for the board, out for departments in this township. As everyone knows, the board makes all decisions. So with that being said, I appreciate it. I hope everybody has a good night, and I will take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed?